Hey everybody, it's Charlene. Today I'm going to be using the new Happy Haunting layering stencils as well as the coordinating dies. Now this layering stencil set has 6 different layers of stencils. You can use them all, you can use a few depending on what you're trying to create. And then if you want to cut out the different things like the jack-o'-lantern or a hat or a piece of candy corn, you can do that from the stenciled image. All of these stencils are labeled. I'm going to start with the ghost layer because that's going to help me see where I'll have the ghost and make sure I'm not putting anything over my ghosts. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm going to use the right hand side of the stencil for everything, and I'm going to bring in some white pigment ink. Now I couldn't find my white pigment ink from Honeybee Stamps. It is fantastic, but I'm not sure where I put it. So I just grabbed a different one here from my stash, and I'm hoping to get a really ghostly result. I think it turns out nicely with the white pigment ink. And I'm doing this over a piece of lilac colored cardstock. So that white pigment ink is going to sit on top of the cardstock, and that's what's going to allow me to create that white ghostly look. Remove this first stencil. It's already starting to look really good, but the trick with white pigment ink to really make it pop is to dry in between doing layers. So I'm going to bring my heat tool in here and dry this. And now I'll add a second layer of that pigment ink. And this is really going to make it look nice and bright white. Take that off. Oh, looks so good. Before I move on to the next layer, I am going to dry this again so my pigment ink does not smear under the other stencils. Now that my ghosts are done, I'm going to bring in the spiderweb layer of the stencil. I'm going to use pigment ink again, but this time I just want there to be a hint of a spiderweb pattern in the background. So I'm not going to do multiple layers this time. I'm going to do just one light layer of the pigment ink, and it's going to lighten up the areas where the stencil openings are and give you this illusion of a nice spiderweb. Now I can go ahead and remove this stencil, and you're going to see all of that nice spider webbing there. Off camera, again, brought in my heat tool and just lightly dried this. Now the pumpkins are created using 2 different layers, and it also creates some of the other details. So I'm bringing in pumpkin number 1. And I'm going to use my Distress Oxide, which is going to work really well because they're going to sit on top of the paper as well because they are a hybrid ink. So they have both dye and pigment. I'm starting out here with Carved Pumpkin, which is a very nice vibrant orange. So I can take this stencil off. You see those beautiful pumpkins as well as some extra details. And next for pumpkin layer number 2, I'm going to bring in some spiced marmalade, which is kind of a nice orangey yellow color. So it's going to give us some variation in our pumpkins, and it is also going to create our second layer of our candy corn. I can take this stencil off now, and you can see it's starting to come together, and it covers over the ghosts and the white pigment ink really well. Next, I'll bring in the bats and hats layer. This is going to create the faces for the jack-o'-lanterns, the hats, as well as some of the faces for our ghosts. For this layer, I'm bringing in some black soot Distress Oxide. Now the black soot is going to layer right over our orange, over our white. We're not going to have any issues. It's going to darken those areas up perfectly so we can create our little faces. And I'm going to make sure to get a really nice layer here. Now I can remove this stencil, and you're going to see, oh, it already looks so cool. This last layer is going to create a few more details. It's going to create the sash for the hat as well as some clouds that go on the sides of the moons, and it will finish off the last layer of our candy corn. I'm going to bring in a yellow here, so I've chosen to bring in some mustard seed, and I'm going to go over this and make sure again that I get a really nice coating with the Distress Oxide. And I just wanted to take a moment and apologize for all the shaking on my camera. when I'm using my foam tools like that, it tends to make my camera shake a little more than usual. But here you can see our nice finished piece. I am going to dry this really well because I don't want any of the Distress Oxide to smear. But do you see all of the cool layers that we have created? And I love how the spider web almost disappears when you turn it in the light. Distress Oxide is just a really cool type of ink when you are layering things up like this. I'm using one of the new A2 shaker pockets, so I'm going to remove the protective film to start off with, and then I will center our piece that we've created right in the center. Now there are some marked score lines on these shaker pockets which make it really easy to fold over the edges, and it also shows you exactly where your piece needs to go. So if your piece is not lining up with those lines, you might need to trim it down just a little bit. And once you have it centered in there, you're going to want to fold over all of these edges. Now you can remove the release tape from 3 of the sides, and as you work your way around, you want to hold down that center piece. You don't want it to shift at all on you when you are putting down those sides, otherwise you might end up with a crooked result. I like to remove the release tape from both of the side flaps before I push them down. This also helps ensure that everything stays nice and straight, and I push down in the middle and then I work my way out to the sides. It's a good idea to use some type of bone folder so that you can really ensure that these are adhered well to your cardstock. And then by leaving that last flap open, you can add in whatever your shaker or sequin mix is. I'm using some black iridescent sequins here, which look really nice. Then you can just remove the release tape from the last flap and go ahead and fold that over, and it's going to contain all of your little shaker bits inside, and there's going to be plenty of room for them to shake around. Look how cute. I did not put very many in there because I didn't want to lose our gorgeous pattern. For the sentiment, I cut out the Too Cute to Spook die from black glitter paper, and then I used the outline shadow die to cut it from vellum. So that's going to help it to stand out on the front of our card. So I'll start here by adding some glue to the back of the Too Cute to Spook die cut. I'm just dotting it all the way along the edges here on the die cut. And then I can place it right over the center of the shadow layer, the vellum layer here. When you're working with vellum, it's important that you don't add too much glue to the back of your die cuts because you don't want it to kind of squeeze out from under the bottom. And to ensure that we don't have any glue showing on the back of the vellum, I am going to do the same thing. I'm just going to dot along where that word die cut is, so that way when I put it on top of our shaker pocket, you're not going to see any of that glue. I'm going to center this right in the center of our shaker pocket, and then I'm going to put an acrylic block over the top while that's drying. Off camera, I went ahead and cut out 3 of the bats using those coordinating dies, and I'm going to add some glue to the back of them and glue them here to another piece of vellum. Then I'm going to trim around the vellum and create my own shadow layer for the bats. It's really easy just to fussy cut right around these. The vellum shadow layer, just like with the word sentiment, is going to help these bats stand out on the front of the card. So I've glued them with just a little bit of glue dotted right behind the bats onto the front of the shaker in a triangle formation around our word die cut, and it looks really nice. I've got an A2 sized card base here. I've added some very sticky double-sided tape to the back, and I'm going to go ahead and fold down the release tape by about a half all the way along the back of the panel. This is going to allow me here to line it up, and then I can commit, press down, and remove the rest of the release tape, and I know that my card base is not going to shift at all while I'm doing that. Here is our finished super cute shaker card. You can see how easily those fun shaker goodies move around in there. We don't lose our bats or our sentiment because of that nice vellum layer. It's just a very cute and fun Halloween card. I hope you guys picked up some tips and tricks today. Please be sure to like and subscribe, as well as hit that notification bell so that I can continue to bring you more crafty content in the future. Until next time, happy crafting.